So on to today's webinar. So as we've probably heard, and as you may have experienced, BC has seen its share of wild weather over the past year and probably years. I can add an S to that, from record-breaking snowfall to heat waves, and of course, recently flooding. And of course, it continues with some challenges we're facing right now in the poultry sector. But the good news is the BC Ministry of Agriculture has incredible resources, incredible people, and support available to producers. So today we're joined by Jim Forbes, who will be speaking about a new resource available to producers called Taking Stock for Flood Recovery. And a little bit about Jim before I give him the floor. Jim is a professional agrologist with over 35 years of experience in agricultural production and management. Since retiring from the Ministry of Agriculture in January of 2020, he has been working as a private agricultural consultant and planning advisor with the BC Environmental Farm Plan Program at the BC Investment Agriculture Foundation. And he's also a trainer for our very own Roots to Success risk management workshop. So we're really lucky to have Jim on our side, and so is the BC Ministry. Over the years working with the Ministry of Agriculture, Jim was called upon to assist with numerous emergency events affecting agriculture, from the almost annual forest fires to pipeline oil spills, mass livestock mortalities, dangerous goods spills, debris flows, an illegal drug lab, and multiple floods. Quite a colored past there, Jim. But having seen the effects of these emergency events on producers, Jim developed Taking Stock Wildlife Recovery, workbook to highlight the use of good farm business management practices to help with recovery. And today, he's with us to talk about a new resource called Taking Stock for Flood Recovery. And it's a workbook to help you on your road to recovery from the floods. It's designed to assist you to assess where you are and figure out how you'll get to where you want to be through self-assessment of your farm management systems, your skills, and your practices. So you'll learn today how planning provides the framework for effective decision-making and how to set and prioritize goals for the future and identify resources that can help meet these goals. And that certainly speaks to what we believe in here at Farm Management Canada, which is, preparation and practice, those business management skills. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim. And thanks so much for being with us here today. And thank you to the BC Ministry of Agriculture for supporting today's presentation.
Good morning, and thank you, Heather, for that introduction. A little bit about Taking Stock. It started quite a few years ago when I was back with the ministry. We'd viewed some resources from Saskatchewan that we felt were very good, and we took them, adapted them for BC situation. And then since then, we've tweaked it for new entrants, for food processors, for the wildfire, as you mentioned, and then now for the floods. And so this particular document has some parts taken out from the original document, just to try to streamline it a little bit for people that are dealing with the effects of the floods. So if I were doing this face-to-face, I would ask how many of you would like a checklist to tell you all the things you need to do or recover from when it comes to the wildfires, droughts, or the latest disaster here for that matter. And my bet is that most of the hands in the room would come up. So would you like, who would like a checklist? I would say, who wouldn't like to have a checklist? They are handy. The thinking is already done for us. They minimize the chance for error. It's simple to go through the list in order and ensure that each task is done and checked off. And they use them for airplanes and space flights, so it would be possible for my farm, right? Well, you are right. You do need a checklist. But if you think about it for a moment, who writes those checklists for those spacecraft and airplanes? It's the people that built them. And why is that? because they know those things inside and out. The other thing to think about here is there only one checklist for all those planes and spacecraft? No. You look at it, they've got a separate checklist for a Huey versus a Boeing 747 or versus the craft that are going up to outer space. So to sit and think that one person could write a checklist for every farm out there is kind of a fallacy. The thing is, you built that farm, so it's up. You're the one that knows best what needs to happen on it, and that's the kind of the rub, is that it would be nice to have somebody else do that for you, but in reality, it's not possible. So you need to make sure that you get it done yourself. The question is, how much do you like working on a computer? I would say most farmers didn't get into farming to spend time monkeying about on a computer. They want to be out in the field working on their crops or working with their animals, and not sitting in an office. And yet, it's that time spent on a computer, marketing, planning, calculating cost of production, assessing and managing risks, hiring and training, tasks otherwise known as managing the farm, that can pay the biggest dividends on the time invested. To put it bluntly, production can provide revenue, but management acumen actually determines whether there is profit or not. And that's sometimes a hard pill to swallow, but the reality of it is you have to spend some time with that management. So whether or not you like computers, you can do this this checklist is set up to do it as hard copy, but you can put it into your computer if you prefer to do it that way. So recovery is a simple process. Really, the concept is you assess your current situation, you identify, your destination, where you want the farm to be, and the more specific you can be with that, the better. And then it's a matter of figuring out how to get there. So in doing that, you're making your own checklist or action plan. And then it comes down to implementing it, taking those actions that will move you towards that destination step by step. But the problem is, it is a big job, and there's no ifs, ands, or doubts about it. And because it's a big job, it's one of those things that gets pushed off, that, oh, we'll do that later when I got more time. Well, when do you really ever have more time? So there's an old saying in the field of time management: how do you eat an elephant? You eat that elephant one bite at a time. So as a manager, it's up to you to decide where to start, which of these areas you're going to work on first, how big those chunks are going to be. And then the other side of it is that the sooner you get it done, the less chance there is for spoilage. So you, as a manager, need to decide if you're going to bring in more mouths and hands to help with it. And the other thing is, are they available? So that may affect whether or not you can get things done as fast as you want or need to do. But the main point here is you can do it, but you can't do it all at once. So don't try to complete this workbook all at once. Set aside some time on a regular basis and go through it one section at a time. And eventually, you'll get there. But I am way too busy. I don't have time for that. The truth is, we all have the same amount of time. So the issue is in how we choose to spend our time. There's an old adage: take time to sharpen the saw, and the wood is easier to cut. And it may seem counterintuitive, but the point is, if you take time to be properly prepared, then the job will go quicker and with less effort. It is a well-used saying, but it is oh so true. And sometimes it's also framed as work smarter, not harder. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where farmers are used to hard work because there's lots of it on the farm. But constantly adding more work or trying to work faster isn't sustainable, particularly after a crisis when there's so many things that need to be done and need to be done quickly. So Brian Tracy is an award-winning author and expert on achievement, business, and time management. And while some people do get caught up in overthinking and navel gazing, a regular planning strategy session can really save a tremendous amount of time. And so Brian's quote here, every minute that you spend planning saves 10 minutes in execution. This gives you 1,000% return on energy. And you may think that's an overstatement, but when you really get into it, I think it rings pretty true for just about every business that on the planet, and that includes agriculture for sure. So you need to take time to plan and prepare so that you know which jobs need to be done first and have the tools, equipment, and materials on hand to get it done quickly and efficiently. And I would like to warn you to stay out of the trap of doing the easy and familiar jobs first. Set aside some time, figure it out, and figure out which ones are the important jobs and do them first. And then the other things will tend to fall into place better. As I mentioned earlier, most of us would rather be out in the fields or with the livestock than doing those management tasks. And it's easy enough to put them off, but those management tasks are what keeps your ship headed in the right direction. And have you ever noticed when you're tired, how simple things can take so much longer to do? If you take the time to rest, it can restore your ability to do things quickly and efficiently, and also to see other ways of doing things that might actually be better. Just like a rechargeable battery, we need to restore our energy reserves, or we can be depleted beyond the capability to hold a charge. So a big portion of this is to kind of define your North Star, your vision for your operation. And so ask the question, how many of you have a formal business plan? A recent survey with Farm Management Canada showed that less than 25% of farmers do. But I would hazard to guess that most of you have some ideas in your head of what you want the farm to be. So really all it is all you need to do is to write that down. Get your ideas on paper, sort through them, and then, if necessary, you can refine them as you go. It gets some of that thinking done up front, so you don't have to get gridlocked by going through all the possible options and permutations for the choices that you're faced with on a day-to-day basis. It also helps to make things more real for you and easier to explain what you're trying to do when you're speaking with your employees and with lenders if you're needing to borrow some money. It helps to point out what's important on that day-to-day basis. And so, and it will affect the decisions that you make. And just for an example here, if you're an older producer and you're getting close to retirement and there's no clear successors, so you're thinking you might have to sell the place, you're going to be likely making different decisions than, say, a younger operator or middle-aged that has a clear successor in training. And when it comes to replacing that machinery or upgrading it or building a new building, when you're looking kind of at the end of your career in agriculture, it's probably more just want to minimize costs and move on with things. Whereas, somebody that's looking with a longer term vision will say, okay, well, we need to replace this anyway. We wanted to upgrade, so let's do this now. And so you're making those different decisions that are both are right for your operation, but you're coming from a slightly different spot. So it makes all the difference in the world as to what you're going to decide and what is right for your operation. Some people view a business plan as some mythical, magical beast that's going to solve everything. But really, it's just writing down your overarching idea for what you want to do with your farm. And that'll change over time too. So, it's not carved in stone. It's not something that you do once, put it up on the shelf and never look at it again. It's something that you need to work with all the time, and you utilize it to help you on those day-to-day decisions. So if you don't already have a business plan in place, the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Fisheries has resources on their website. And in particular, there's a document named Business Plan Resources in the links under Stream 1 Business Plan Coaching. And this is the URL for it here. You should have access to it by the time we're done. Go on there, read that, and it'll help you go through some of that business planning stuff that you need to do. So this one is around how do you prioritize which items to do first. And so this is a slightly different take on the Eisenhower matrix that's attributed to President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and how he was fairly legendary at the time on making his decisions and keeping quite focused on what needed to be done. So it's a fairly simple system that helps to determine or manage your priorities on a regular basis, whether that's in the moment, for the day, for a weekly or monthly or quarterly or annual perspective. You may want to do one of these for your personal life as well as the business life, and then mesh them together. Or you can try to do it all at once. It's really based on what your personal preference is. But you rate your activity on 1 to 5 from importance and 1 to 5 for urgency. And so the ones that come out with a 5 by 5, those are the ones you do now. The ones that come out in a 1 to 2 by 5, those are the ones you schedule for later. The ones that come out lower importance, like 2 or 2.5, you can delegate or negotiate on those ones, so that works on your timeline. And the ones that are not important and they're not urgent, those are the ones that you need to eliminate and learn to say no. And we'll go through a few examples here. So I know there's quite a few dairy farmers down in the Fraser Valley that were impacted by the floods. So if you had a malfunction on your milk tank, that's a direct effect on your income. So that's very important. And, spoilage happens fairly quick. So that's very urgent. And so that would end up here as a 5 by 5. A lot of you be, looking at replanting a field, but you've got some time to do that. So maybe that's a 4 by 3. But eventually, depending on the spring, that will move up in urgency. And so it'll come over here into your do now section. For C, we're looking at, you get a call from a feed salesman or some supplier that actually works for the competitor to the company that you usually deal with. And so you can choose to uh, you know, get him to talk to the herdsman, or you can ask him to come back on a specific date and time that suits your situation, so that you can assess whether or not you want to, entertain the ideas of what he's got. And the other thing is that priority may change, and you could put him off for 6 months and then say, my supplier's not doing what they should. What have you got for me? So you do it on your schedule, not theirs. The other one, you're looking at things like following a pop-up ad while you're working on your computer on the internet, or you're channel surfing on the TV. Those are things that, you've got more important things to do. And when you have that vision of what needs to be done, it's a lot easier to say no to some of these things, because you see the relative importance of them in the overall scheme of things. So this system, you can use it, get your to-do list done. You want to have about 6 up to 6 items on your to-do or today list, and any more than that, and it gets too cluttered, and you can't, you end up not dealing with them well, I guess I'll put it that way. But as you go through your day, you've got your to-do list, and something pops up, you can immediately go, okay, is this important and urgent? Where does it fit amongst these other ones that I've got to do today? And if it doesn't fit, that it's good, that today's the day for it, then you reschedule it, or delegate it, or maybe it's something that you really don't need to do, and you just eliminate it. So a couple other tips. You wouldn't try to swallow an elephant whole, so don't try to do that recovery plan all at once. Break it down, set aside some regular time, and I would say you want to set that aside probably first thing in the morning with a cup of coffee, when the emergencies of the day haven't arisen yet, and you're not distracted, and you still have some energy. Because if you say, oh, I'll do that later tonight, by the time it gets to later tonight, you still haven't finished everything on your to-do list, and you got no energy left. And so with the importance of these decisions, you need to prioritize that, move it up first thing in the morning. And, again, don't try to do it all at once. Just do the things you can in the time that you have allotted for it, and then go out and do the rest of the day. Sometimes, you get working on something in the morning like that, and then you can't quite get finished, but it'll be in the back of your mind as you're going through the day, and you might come up with a better solution than if you just tried to rush yourself through that morning. The other thing is, if and where possible, delegate or contract out the action items that you've identified through this process. So you've decided, okay, we're going to do this this workbook. The big thing you do, you sit down, you pick a section, and there's 7 sections in the book. So we've kind of laid them out in what we felt was a logical order with regards to priority or urgency for a family farm that's responding to a recent emergency. So psychologically, people tend to be more productive when their basic needs for food, water, and shelter are looked after. And so that's part of the reason we placed the people and the home up near the front. But if you feel you want to dive into a different section first because it makes more sense to you, then by all means do that. In the end, you want to have covered through all of those sections. So, and for budgeting your time, you'll want to plan on it to be at least 7 or 8 sessions. We've got the 7 sessions here, and then you're going to have to do some summary work and stuff to bring it all together. So likely going to be 8 sections, unless some of these you can whip off pretty quick. You know, if your infrastructures aren't damaged, and you know, then you can concentrate on other sections, kind of thing. So you've picked your section. Step 2, you read the background information for context. Each of these sections has a little introduction that will take you between 4 and 22 minutes to read and give you some context about the things that you're going to need to consider. And then you will get into the third step, which is answering those questions. And so possible answers are provided for each question to guide you in assessing the situation for your farm. And they're kind of rated according to a traffic light. So green means you're on the right track, that you understand what you're dealing with, and things are well in hand. Yellow means that there could be some changes that you need to make. So, you know, that's kind of a cautionary thing. And red, of course, is a red flag. There's something going on here that you're going to need to get into further understanding of it and taking specific actions so that you don't get into trouble. You know, because some of these are the red flags that we've seen on other operations that have, you know, have ceased operating over time. So with this, there's between 6 and 12 questions per section to help you self-assess. And so the whole idea is that you read through this and you find the one that kind of fits best for your situation, because they're on the spectrum. And so you might be in between the green and the yellow. And so you have to kind of gauge, okay, I think we have it mostly in hand, or yeah, no, maybe we do need to have a closer look at this. So once you've figured out which of those 3 fits your situation best, you check off the corresponding box down below here. Some of the questions will have the blue not applicable, but that's only for a few of the questions. Most of them they'll have, you know, when you're assessing things, it's more general for the overall business end of it that most operations will be having to deal with. So, but some of those are more specific to a type of operation and may not apply to everyone. So there's the one question. Are you okay? Have you discussed grief with your family members and employees to ensure that they are okay? And do you, as the manager, know what to do if they're struggling? A couple more of the examples of the questions. So, are your communications working normally? I don't think that was as much of a problem in the floods, but with the fires, we definitely had some communication towers that were burned, and you know, lack of communication was a big problem, both from the emergency response, but also for the individuals in the area. Another question: have you explored what disaster financial assistance covers and made an application if you qualify? So yes, yeah, we did it, or we haven't looked into it yet, or no, we didn't even know about it, kind of thing. And I'm thinking that the deadlines are probably up for that, but Ministry of Agriculture staff should be able to tell you where you sit on that front. Another question here: have you made a plan for which jobs will be handled by family and staff, and which will require outside help? So yes, or we'll think about it, or no. You pick your answer, and then have a look at how much of a priority is that really for your operation. Step 4 is to record those priorities. So you're looking at this will be a section at a time, and you look at the high priority items that you know that you need to continue. Then you look for the high priority items that where you may need to reevaluate some things. And you definitely want to deal with the high priority items that you need to change for that section. So after you've written that down and how to sort through that, you'll start to write a few action items for this section. And so each one of those, you'll have that priority description from the last page, and you'll write down your action statement. And you may have a few that will help cover off an individual situation. And you'll notice on the bottom here that these will be transferred onto a summary page. Now, you can do that in one of two ways. You can do it right after you've written the section or gone through the section, or you can wait till you've gone through all the sections and then kind of prioritize before you write them down as to which ones are the more important for your operations, and some of them that might go on to the next list after you've completed your highest priority items. After that, you're going to complete a quick SWOT. So SWOTs are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Having gone through this to this point in the workbook, you've already looked at your internal strengths and weaknesses. And so now you got to have a quick look at the external changes or trends that may provide opportunities for your operation, and also those external changes or trends that might be a threat for your operation, so that you can consider how you might take advantage of something, or how you might eliminate a risk, or do something so that that threat is not going to come to fruition on your operation. Moving on to step 8. So if you've already got a formal business plan, you could skip writing this stuff, but you still will want to use your formal business plan as you're going through the remainder here. So otherwise, if you don't have that formal business plan, you write in your key goals into this section, and it'll help you lay out your longer term objectives. After that, you're carrying down those responses to each of the preceding sections into your flood recovery or your whole farm action plan. And you're assigning that priority to it, which ones you're going to tackle first, as well as setting a completion date and who will be responsible for that completion. And so this is where it forces some communication on the farm. If you've got family and staff working with you, you can't just decide, okay, well, Joe will do this, and then not tell Joe, and then and you end up with some friction down the road. So it's a good idea that once you've got this plan together, that you communicate this with your family and the staff as to, here's the list of things that we got to get done now. You can ask for their input. Do they have other things that should come in here? And the other thing is, you're going to be responsible for this, and I would like you to have it done by this time. You think you could do that? get their agreement, and then let them get at it so that you can worry about other things. And once you've got all that completed, voila, you've got your action plan for your operation. And in other words, you've got your personalized checklist for what needs to happen next. One thing that I really want to stress here is this is a living document. So you do your assessment, you write your plan, you start to implement it, and then you're monitoring it to say, okay, is this working? If it is, great. If it's not working, is there something we can fix to make it work? Or is there something we should do different? You write that in and you start that cycle again as to implementing and monitoring that and reevaluate. And so that completed farm action plan provides you with a list of the actions in order to recover from the floods. And perhaps make other improvements to your farm business as well. When you're the other thing to remember is when you're in the recovery mode, everybody's stressed. So please be kind to yourself and those around you. The flood recovery is a process that is going to take time, and it can also evolve over time. With that, I think we're, something else to mention here, and part of the reason that we have some of the staff from the Ministry of Agriculture on the call is to so you can ask them some more questions about this. But with the BC Agribusiness Planning Program, there's the 3 streams: the business plan coaching, business disaster recovery planning, and the specialized business planning. And so this really relates to stream 2 here with the business disaster recovery planning, where it provides up to $5,000 in business planning services and coaching for farms from a qualified business consultant. And so that's to help you develop your immediate and your long-term recovery plan. And one of the eligible activities is for them to actually help you go through this workbook. So during that process, you may also find that you need to work on your succession plan or some of these other things. And so you can actually proceed after that into the specialized business planning, which also provides some funding for a qualified business consultant to help you out. So check out the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food website for more information with regards to your eligibility, and or talk to Trish and Gary that are on the webinar today. So with that, I will open it up for questions. And I also have to share the obligatory. The funding partners are CAP, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Government of Canada. And then we really like to thank Farm Management Canada for hosting this webinar today. And with that, I will stop sharing and bring up the chats here so that I can see what all I missed while I was on the roll.
Yeah, it's been a regular party on the chat. Well, thanks very much for that, Jim. We haven't had any questions come through the chat. We've been kind of sharing some links back and forth, Trish and I, with the participants, sharing the link to the BC Agribusiness Planning Program and a link to the Taking Stock workbooks, including the flood recovery piece as well. So yeah, I mean, if Trish and Gary have anything to add on the programming available or dates or application deadlines and openings and things like that, we're happy to hear from the both of them. And certainly if there are any questions, feel free to pass them along. I really like the the kind of matrix you provided on the importance and the urgency, I think that provides a really nice map to kind of figure out how to prioritize, and in a relatively, easy way, just to be like, yeah, there's things I'd love to do, but given everything else going on, maybe I need to put that aside for now. And even things I was thinking as well, kind of about mental health, and how, sometimes you feel like you have so much to do, but there's also taking care of yourself. And sometimes that becomes, more urgent in some cases, and certainly, important and a priority. So sometimes you do have to kind of, say, I'm going to stop the madness for, for the afternoon, and take care of myself, or, building in time for the business, but also time for yourself and for those other members of the team. Because I can just imagine, I know you've had a lot of experience with, disaster recovery, and it makes a lot of sense that you're focusing on people first, and self, as well as team and family. And I definitely invite you, Jim, to just kind of, if you want to kind of wing it and kind of share with us, of course, the Taking Stock for Flood Recovery is an awesome resource, but kind of what you see as kind of the first steps in terms of this recovery process. So if you've just gone through, a flooding, or maybe for those producers going through the avian influenza, just kind of, how to get started. Like, should they get started by looking at a workbook like this, or are there more, pressing things to do, or how does that kind of land from a kind of, personal, right here, right now, experiential side of things?
Yeah, it's always really tough because there's so much going on right when it's happening. And so it's really tough to take that time and say, okay, get my head straight. What do I have to do first? Because there's so many things that are coming at you. Like right now with the avian influenza, everybody's on pins and needles, and that's some of the time to kind of be preparing for, okay, if this happens, here's the things that I have to do. So you've got a little bit of a lead time on something like that. The flooding, because of the way it happened with the breach of the diking system, that makes it a lot harder. And so people were a lot less prepared for it, because having that faith in that diking system, that's held in quite a few situations before, and then then all of a sudden so that makes it all that much more tougher to to have to deal with all those emergency situations. And so it's hard to remember that you want to drain the swamp when you're got all those alligators at you, but you got to find that time to just to sit down and think it through. Okay, what are the most important things to get done now? And if you've got that business plan written down, you can look at that and say, okay, in order to maintain where we're trying to go with that, you've at least got that North Star direction to to help you write your course and get after those things that are going to help keep that. Whereas if you haven't got that figured out, it can really put you in a tailspin. And I think a lot of operators just end up kind of capitulating, and I've seen producers that are just kind of locked up and not functioning well at all, and it's heartbreaking. But it just the way things go when you haven't got some of that other stuff lined up. So it can really help. I saw a question here. So from Don, what's your sense of how well producers have been dealing with the recovery from flooding in BC in terms of planning and just in general? I guess I would say I'm not down there in the thick of it, so I may not be the best, the best weather gauge for this. But I would say that that we do see that spectrum from people that are dealing quite well with it, and others that they've kind of lost their way and aren't dealing quite as well with it. I would say thankfully those are relatively few, but you have to acknowledge that they're out there. Overall, I think things are headed in the right direction, but it's a long road back. There's no ifs or ands about it. It takes time, and you got to deal with the people first, so that they're able to to dust themselves off and get headed back in the right direction. So a comment from Rudy here. I feel after and during the flood, it was hard to gauge the amount of damage or what was going to happen. That's always a fair comment. You can never have enough information in the in the thick of things, and that's not only is that true on the ground at the farm, but it's also true in the emergency operations center, where you'd think we have, when you're in an emergency operations center, you have all that information, but honestly, it's not it's not easy to forecast what's going to go on, where things are gonna go wrong, or where you can head things off the path. So and when it's that hard in the emergency operations center, it's that much harder at the farm, where you're not plugged into all that other information. And so I agree with Rudy, it is tough. So another question from Don here. Do you think producers need to be more prepared for these things, given the way extreme weather extremes are predicted to be more frequent due to climate change? I guess the simple answer for that is yes. There's a lot more going on. The Routes to Success webinars with Farm Management Canada that I'm quite thankful to have been involved in are all about the risk management, and it's weather is only one of the risks that producers have to deal with, and so developing an overall plan to deal with all the risks, whether it's market risk or whether it's human resources risk, or the weather risk. You have to acknowledge that it's out there and give at least some cursory thought to what would I do in this situation. And like I said, with the avian influenza, those guys they got a little bit more of a heads up, and it's also happened a number of times here in the last decade or so, and so it's getting to be a little bit more routine, and so it's an easier thing to kind of plan for. It's kind of the black swan events that are really hard to get prepared for, but if you've given some thought to it, then you can be prepared for it. And in some cases, when it's markets and that sort of thing, you can actually take advantage of it. When it comes to weather issues like this, it's hard to take advantage of something like that, but you can certainly be more prepared, with your building designs and that sort of thing, so that you're um, building that resiliency into your operation over time. So another comment from Rudy here. I think not only the farmers need to be, I guess, prepared, but those municipalities and response teams as well. It's a fair comment, Rudy. I think as time goes on and we seem to be getting more and more of these emergencies, that incident command system is getting to be more well known, and local governments as well as provincial and federal governments are gearing up for it better. And like you say here, we were hit hard with removal of access to Highway 1 being shut down between Abbotsford and Chilliwack for resources availability, and that communication and transportation are two really high priorities when it comes to the emergency management end of things. And the big problem is that you just can't anticipate everything. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and look at those things and look at the likelihood of them. Oh, well, I was just going to say I'd like to thank everybody that's tuned in today, and it's one of those things. I'm sorry if I skipped a slide there. It's one of those things where I'm used to presenting and having faces in front of me and more feedback, so that I can read whether I need to speed up or slow down and that sort of thing. So hopefully they got some useful information out of it.
I think so. Most definitely. I can definitely relate to the the challenge of not being able to feed off of an audience, and if anyone's smiling or eating popcorn or bored. Maybe what I'll do is I'll thank you, Jim, for the presentation and for fielding the questions, of course, and for all the participants as well for your questions. And if you have more, feel free to share them. And I'll ask maybe if Trish Laharn or Gary Flatten from the ministry have anything to add, maybe some comments around the Abbotsford and Chilliwack area, because I know you're perhaps more familiar with those areas and how farmers and producers have fared, and kind of what they can do or what we can do to prepare down the road should these events continue to happen or happen in different ways. So Trish and Gary, do you have anything to add?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to also thank Jim for a wonderful presentation, and for you, Heather, for hosting this. With regard to the flooding last fall, I'm also not in the thick of things, but I do know from a personal perspective, I think a lot of producers are still in the response phase, that they're still actively in the thick of it, and some of them will, now that the spring has come and whatnot, they won't get down to fully going through a comprehensive risk assessment or going through the taking stock till maybe the fall. It takes time, and it's really hard to go through an event like that, and it's emotionally hard. And I would encourage everyone to really pay attention, like Jim said, to the people around you and their mental health and their health and wellness needs. So with regard to the program, our BC Agribusiness Planning Program, the tools and resources listed on our website, please, anyone can take advantage of those. You don't have to be in BC. We do have a business planning checklist. We've got some information about how to write a business plan, and some sample templates. And I would encourage everyone to look at Farm Management Canada's national resource website, and even look at some of the other provinces, like Manitoba, for example. They have great cost of production Excel sheets and things like that. But the program will be open in the next couple of days for those who live in BC. So please check our website regularly, and also look at some of the other programs that are available, like the Environmental Farm Plan. I come from a farming background, and I know it's hard to do this planning. It's hard to sit down, but when you have a plan in place, you know, it's something you can fall back on, and everyone within the farm is on the same page. And when you do face an event like this, it helps reduce that anxiety and stress. So over to you, Heather.
All right, thanks very much for those comments, Trish. And again, thank you to the BC Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forest as well. And to, of course, our presenter, Jim, and our participants. And we do just have a few little poll questions. You want to see how we did today, and if there's more that you would like to see from us and hear from us. So you'll see those poll questions pop up right now. And if you could just take a few minutes to answer them, it'll let us make sure that we're creating content that that you need, that you want, in a way that you need and want them. So again, thank you so much. It's just 2 minutes after the top of the hour, so we're right on time. And again, I wish you a wonderful afternoon and good health and safety as we move forward. And you know, good preparation, as Jim says, in preparing for whatever the future holds. So thank you again. Really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.
So those big picture ideas, that's your business plan. Whatever else you do from this, get them down on paper.